next conversation is about the future of financial technology, or Fintech, and how it is transforming banking, payments, and investment. Importantly, it's also democratizing access to financial services for people around the world. Here to discuss where Fintech goes next, please welcome Emily Chu, Chief Executive Officer for Novo, which is an online banking platform for small businesses. Okay, so I should note that in addition to being the new CEO of Novo, Emily spent how many years at Block?
Over 7 years.
Over 7 years at Block, parent company of Square and Cash App. So lots of knowledge on Fintech and one of the pioneers. So I want to start out by asking you, we've seen this kind of Fintech revolution on the consumer side. What's the status when it comes to businesses, and especially small businesses, which is Novo's focus?
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Michal. Small businesses are still so underserved today. In the US alone, there's 33 million small businesses. It contributes to half of the country's employment, close to half of the country's GDP. And these stats are really reflected globally. Despite it being such a huge driver, we really haven't seen the same type of innovation in the B2C fintech space, in the B2B world. And I live this every day at home. My husband is a small business entrepreneur. And when you speak to small businesses across the world, you constantly hear how underserved, how underlooked they are. And a big reason for this is because they're just simply not the primary focus for large banks. And so I think the same kind of innovation that we brought over the years at Square, at Cash App, in making people who have been previously unseen and unserved first-class citizens, there's a huge opportunity to do that at Novo, bringing the best of not just banking, but all of the different services that small businesses need to grow and thrive under one roof, and making their lives easy so they can focus on building their businesses and thriving.
So I know you've said and you've thought a lot about this kind of concept of there being a lot of room for innovation, a lot of open space in areas that have historically not really provided access for everyone. Share real quick the story of your mom.
It's pretty amazing that we're here at the Fortune International Women Most Powerful Conference, because I look back at the arc of my own history. And my grandmother was the last generation of women who had her feet bound. Wow. It was elite for women to actually not be able to walk and be carried, right? That's how much agency women had. And I look one more generation forward to my mom, and she arrived in the United States as an immigrant in the 70s. And I don't know if a lot of people remember, but up until 1974, a woman couldn't open a bank account in the United States nor access any kind of credit without a male guarantor signing for her and vouching for her. So you have my feisty mother arriving, and she's a creative, she's a jewelry maker, she used to travel all over the world, she's a calligrapher and artist, and she had big dreams of being able to provide for herself by creating a business around this. And she couldn't get a bank account, and she couldn't get a line of credit. And so she actually met my father because she put out a call to her friends saying, I need to meet a man who could sponsor me for my business. and when she first met him, she said, well, I need all these things. I need credit. I need access to a bank account. And when we do that, my money is still my money, but your money is my money too. And so...
And they did fall in love.
They did fall in love,
okay.
Yes, not just for access to credit. But it just goes to show that over the last 50 years, it's only been 50 years in the US, so much has changed. And I talked to my mom today, and just the fact that I'm on stage here with you as the CEO of a banking platform granting access to credit, loans, helping businesses thrive, many of them female-owned businesses, is just incredible, just looking at the arc of how far we've come.
Well, so give just the kind of like one or two liner on what Novo actually does.
Sure. We're one of the most simple banking platforms for small businesses. We have a globally distributed workforce from the US to Colombia to India, and we serve about 250,000 small businesses a day, businesses of all types. We make it incredibly easy for you to get a bank account with no fees, no minimums, so you could start with literally $100 if that's all you had. We make it very easy for you to get access to credit, debit card, credit card spend. And in addition to that, we tie it to all the needs that you have, from bookkeeping to sending invoices to auto tagging your expenses, just to make your life easy, because these are really not why people went into business, to do bookkeeping and expenses and taxes. So we take care of that for people.
And you touched on this earlier, just kind of the presence, the over-indexing of women on the small business side.
Yeah.
By the way, I think we talk about startups a lot. We're talking small businesses that are not, venture-backed necessarily, right? Which is really the bread and butter of more so of the more representative of the real small business economy. Talk about in what ways you see what Novo's doing, and just more products out there, more tech platforms that cater to small businesses, having an impact on not just entrepreneurs, but female entrepreneurs. And I know you've got some interesting stats on that end.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable because Fortune is always highlighting women and promoting women in the Fortune. And the stats are 11%, I think, of Fortune companies are currently
Fortune
led by
500.
women.
Yep.
And so it was an interesting observation in our conversation that in the US, about 43% of small businesses are led by women. So
much higher than 11%.
Much higher.
Obviously.
Yeah, and I look globally, and the statistics are very similar. Here in the Kingdom, the number is about 45%, so maybe even a little higher than in the US, which is just so exciting to me, just knowing that women are out there creating, building, being really part of the fabric of growth for our economies, just given how much of GDP small businesses drive. To bring it back to tangible examples, during COVID, we actually had one female owner that we were supporting on the banking side. She started a business called DeLuna, and it actually helps women with period pain. And so they make very natural products that are meant to support women when they have cramps or when they feel like they can't get up and go to work. And really just their mission is to make it such that no woman is held back by her period from going on and doing what she needs to do in the world. This business almost went bankrupt during COVID because her supply chain was so backed up. I mean, they had months of inventory queued up. They needed access to credit. And during that time, we were actually able to run, based on our proprietary data and algorithms that we built, a way to surface who are all the people that we could help and proactively help. And so based on that, we surfaced her business. We were able to get her $30,000 in a loan that landed literally days after we simplified the application for her. We found another $20,000, $30,000 worth of credits she didn't know about, just closing the gap between knowledge and access. And her business is thriving today. It was featured in Vogue, it was featured in the New York Magazine, and so it's just amazing the impact of what you can do, just getting people through the hardships of small businesses. There are many make or break moments, and I really think the next generation of fintechs and bankings are the ones that are going to be proactive about thinking through how can we help.
Yeah, no, that's a huge, huge shift there. So let's take a step back, talk about kind of fintech trends more broadly beyond Novo. One of the things that we've seen take off in recent years are these kind of financial fintech super apps, payment super apps, I should say. That's not, I know in the United States that's not really been the trend. What are you seeing on a more global level? Are super apps the future? Is that, and if Novo has an angle there too, please share.
Yeah, I think that the trend towards consolidation and giving consumers more convenience, access, and personalization isn't going away. I think the term super app has taken very different forms around the world. And so if you look to Asia, the WeChat apps of the world, the Alipay apps of the world, the GrabPay apps of the world, they've all evolved in very interesting ways and become really monolithic apps that enable you to do everything. Pay your bills, buy groceries, conduct financial transactions. It really is an all-in-one app. GrabPay actually had an interesting story because their app started by serving small business drivers, almost like Uber drivers, who didn't have access to the banking system and needed a way to be paid. And so financial services became a very logical outgrowth to the ride-hailing app and became a super app. In the US, I would say it's been more focused on consumer apps. And so businesses like Cash App, where I was, or Revolut, PayPal. These are the businesses that have really thought through building it, not so much in the Asian style as a monolithic everything app, but much more of an ecosystem of fintech applications. And so just as an example for me, when I was innovating for Cash App, we serve largely underbanked people who had never owned access to, in some cases, a bank account, but in many cases owned equity, owned stocks, had any means of building wealth. And so we really thought of the app as how can we continue to innovate and build to bring more utility, more engagement to our customers, and give them access to what they actually wouldn't get access to at a large bank. And so that's more of the shape that it's taken in the consumer side in the US. I haven't really seen so much in the business side, the SMB side, but I think that's changing. You now see apps that are focused on spend management start to think about bank accounts. You now start seeing bank accounts starting to think about, should we then help with taxes? Should we then help with all of the integrated ways to be the control panel for your business? So I think that's gonna change, and I'm pretty excited about being part of leading that opportunity.
So we've had a few conversations about AI on stage, and there'll be more today. And I'm curious to hear, with the popularity of fintech, obviously there's concerns for risks as well, security, fraud, all of that, which we have in traditional finance too, of course. Coupled with AI, Gen AI, what is that future? What do the future risks look like? I mean, what are you seeing now, and what are you doing about it to mitigate future risk?
Yeah, so the part that I'm really excited about is the level of personalization it can bring. I do think that AI will level the playing field for small businesses. Even at my company, I don't know if our chief people officer is in the audience, but she's been over the last year building apps in Python, building apps to streamline the HR function without the need for an engineer, right? So it's just incredible that one person with a great idea can now just go out and prototype, build. You really can see one-person businesses becoming, what used to require entire teams and funding. So that's very exciting. I'm also really excited about our ability to personalize things for people, just given the data that they have. Small businesses today, they often dread logging into their bank account. They might have unpaid bills. There's nothing that helps with scenario planning. If you're a small business and you don't know when you're going to get paid, the variances to that could really impact your cash flows. It could really impact how quickly you can pay your own suppliers and employees. And currently, my husband, who runs a small business, keeps a 20-page spreadsheet to do that.
That sounds fun.
Not fun. There's just really nothing for him. So there's a lot that AI can bring, but we were talking about the risks. And I think from a financial services perspective, everyone's talking about AI in terms of how it can drive productivity and personalization. And biases, obviously, in terms of how you underwrite and how that mimics the existing biases in our current world and data set. But one risk that I don't really hear people talk much about that I think is significant is the risk of it actually breaking the trust and identity systems upon which our entire economy relies, right? When you log into a bank, you need to make sure that you're not a fraudster, that you're not logging in to facilitate terrorist financing. There are global standards around this. And more AI is able to very realistically mimic deep fakes, such that in Hong Kong.
Can you share real quick?
Yeah,
this story is
Yeah,
crazy.
I was in Hong Kong when the news broke, and there was a finance executive who was told by his CFO to wire 200 million Hong Kong dollars out. He didn't know if this was legitimate, and he said, let me get on a Zoom call with you. So he got on a Zoom call with his CFO and 2 members of the finance team, and then convinced that this was real, sent the money. That was all a deep fake. So we're going to run into a world where our ability to really trust and validate what's real, the system of trust upon which commerce relies, upon which fintech relies, is going to be a real challenge, and that presents both risks but also opportunities.
So if Emily asks you for money, I don't know, we need a secure code or
Exactly.
something.
Some kind of wink.
I mean, just real quick, are there obvious solutions to that you're already looking at?
There's some wild solutions where some people are trying to build a trust layer for the internet. Others are looking into biometrics, like retina scans. There's a lot of different solutions. There are folks on the compliance side that are pioneering different ways, but it's not a solved situation yet, and so it's something I would be on the lookout for if you're in this even if you're outside of fintech.
Well, we'll leave you with that food for thought. It's a crazy story. Emily, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Appreciate it.